Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tech Apprentice webinar on cybersecurity. My name is Bruce Stephen. I'm with the Boston Private Industry Council. I run the Tech Apprentice program for the PIC, and we're very happy to have you join us today if you're part of the Tech Apprentice program or if you're a youth that's part of another Boston area tech learning program. This is the third of 6 webinars that we are doing. And we're very, very happy to have, and go to the next slide, an expert team today from Cyber Warrior Academy. Cyber Warrior Academy was formed in 2017, and they deliver cybersecurity training, apprenticeships, and professional development. They're currently running their first virtual summer cybersecurity for boot camp for youth across the country, and we'll be working soon to bring cybersecurity training to the Boston public high schools. Cyber Warriors are a wonderful partner of the Boston PIC, so we're very pleased to have this expert team today, including Rainier Moquette, who founded Cyber Warrior, and he's the CEO of the organization. We're also going to be hearing from Omar Alvarado, who's the Chief Information Security Officer, Jonathan Edwards, who's the COO, and finally Mark Nazaro, who's helping to run that boot camp I talked about that's for youth this summer. We have a very full agenda today. We're going to open with Rainier and hear about his amazing journey into cybersecurity and entrepreneurship. And then we're going to be joined by Jonathan, the COO, who's going to talk a little bit about the cyber industry. We'll do an overview of different cybersecurity threats with Omar, and then we're going to get into a really cool part of the program today, which is a live hack demo. We always leave some time at the end for Q&A. As we go along, please feel free to put your questions into the chat, and we'll get to those as we go. And then we'll leave some time again at the end for other questions. So quite a bit to get to today. I'm very happy to bring into the program Rainier to talk about his experience and journey into cyber and entrepreneurship. Rainier.
Hey, thank you for the introduction, Bruce, and thanks everyone for joining us today. You know, given the short amount of time that we have together, we're going to try to make this as expeditious. So I'm just sharing my screen here. I'm going to try to make this as expeditious as possible. So as Bruce mentioned, our goal for today is just to kind of give you a little bit of an introduction into the cybersecurity industry. I'm not sure how much you may or may not know, but it is an industry in which there are today 3.5 million jobs across the globe. And that's actually a number that likely, I haven't seen the official statistics, but the need for cybersecurity professionals has actually gone up. I can share that anecdotally, simply because all these people are working from home, and as such, there's more to protect. So the threats actually have increased under the current circumstances. So my goal for today is just to kind of give you a quick overview of the industry and also tell you a little bit about how I came into it, and then you know, we'll take you to the rest of the agenda that Bruce mentioned. So conscious capitalism and social impact, just a little overview of the different things that I do. I'm both the CEO of Cyber Warrior Consulting. We provide cybersecurity engineering services, penetration testing, cloud security, all these geeky things to big companies, folks like banks, hospitals, universities, a lot of the organizations that you may be familiar with in the Boston area, and a number of others across the country. And I've also started a few other entrepreneurial endeavors, both on the for-profit side as well as nonprofit things. Some of you may be familiar with some of the robotics programs that we've done in the past and have partnered with Boston PIC on, as well as some of the other initiatives that we've participated in. I was born in New York City. I spent most of my childhood in Dominican Republic. I moved to Boston in 1999, and I had no clue what I wanted to do. I did know, however, that in order for me to do anything of value, I needed to have an education. So I was working full time, 40 hours a week was very rare. It was usually 50 to 60 hours a week. And then I used to go to night school. I first went to Bunker Hill Community College, then I went to UMass Boston, and then I eventually went to Pace University in New York on what was then one of the first remote programs that were being delivered across the country. I started my first business in 2007. I had started other things before, but this is like the first business. And at that point, we were selling iPods and things like that we were importing from China and then selling them in the internet and then also selling them in Dominican Republic. So Advocate Technology Group is the company that originally we started, and then since then we've renamed it as Cyber Warrior Consulting. Here's a little bit more about that. And, so I put this slide up as a way of kind of getting us, into the topic. Essentially what we have is a situation in which back in the day, we would have, this is how people used to rob banks and how crimes were happening, right? It was these guys that you see in the movies, and it was face to face, it was in person, and that's just not the way we live today. Today, it's a world in which somebody who's 3,000 miles away, sometimes more than that, they could be halfway across the world, and they are gaining access to your computer, gaining access to your data, and essentially stealing your proprietary information and that of your loved ones and that of a business. And, it's really creating a lot of havoc. You may have heard about the impact that cybersecurity had on the last election. And with the new election that's going to come up this year, there's also a lot of concern over cybersecurity threats and how criminals could be manipulating the outcomes of something that is as important as a presidential election. Cyber threats are very, very common. Cyber threats are something that if you look at some of these companies, you may be familiar with some of these names, some of these logos. And if you look at the numbers, the number of millions of accounts, tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of accounts that are being exposed. And when I say exposed, I mean that these people are going into these companies and stealing all kinds of credit card information. They're stealing information around retirement plans, and they're stealing the personal credentials, usernames, passwords, and other things of people like you and I. So imagine that you've been, your parents, your family members, your loved ones have been saving for years to buy a home, or they've been saving to help pay for your college education. And one day that bank account gets wiped out because somebody compromised the computer of your parents. They got access to their bank account information, and then they initiated an online wire transfer. And let me tell you, once that money is gone, that money is gone. You're not going to get it back. It's not something that that's covered under what's called FDIC insurance, which is essentially something that that the banks have. That if the bank goes under, if the bank has a failure, then they're protected, and the money that people have in there is protected. If your bank account gets hacked, and it's because they compromised your computer and they cleaned out your account, well, guess what? The bank is not going to reimburse you for that money. It was up to you to protect the keys to your safe. And if you let someone get access to those keys, then unfortunately you're out of luck. So this is real, and this affects all of us every single day. So it's really important to understand the impact of it. That's the annual damage of cybercrime, $6 trillion. And right now, cybersecurity crime represents a bigger market than all illegal drug trade across all drugs across the entire world combined. And it's really important to understand that you may see a lot of things glamorized in the news, but right now the biggest threat to economies and the ability to be sustainable is the threat of cybersecurity attacks. Notice the unemployment rate. We're talking about 0% unemployment. And actually, since 2016 is what we have here, I've recently seen data that indicates that it's actually, earlier than that. So it's pretty remarkable. And if you think about the growth that there's been, in a period of 2 years, the damage that cybersecurity attacks have caused has gone up by a factor of 15 in a period of 2 years. I mean, that's pretty dramatic, right, when you think about that. Now, there's a really good career path for those that are interested in pursuing it, right? So these are the 5 most in-demand cybersecurity jobs, and as you can see, they pay very, very well. These are jobs that, yes, require for you to take training. Sometimes they require a college degree, sometimes they don't, but they certainly will require a lot of focus, a lot of commitment to education, a strong commitment to learning new things, and prioritizing the fact that you want to achieve this goal above other distractions that you may have, whether it's hanging out with your friends, doing this or doing that. Like anything else, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to sacrifice yourself, and coming into the cybersecurity industry is certainly no exception. Here I wanted to give you 3 quick tips for online safety. Essentially, there's a number of things that you can do in order to protect yourself. This is one of the most common questions we get from people. Hey, how do I stay safe online? Well, first of all, watch out for email phishing. And later in the presentation, we're going to talk about what that is. But essentially, it's someone tricking you into clicking on a link, whether that link came in via email, came in via social media, came in via text message. Somebody's tricking you to click on something. And by clicking on something, again, you'll see later in the presentation what could happen. 2, create strong passwords and use a password manager. A password manager is essentially a vault. It's a digital vault. It's something that you install on your computer. It's something you can install on your phone. And this thing automatically generates passwords for you, and then also remembers those passwords so that you can have really complex passwords. The fact is that if you're using a password that includes a combination of your name, of your birthday, of your friend's name, or of your address, or anything like that, that password can be hacked using software in a matter of seconds. Literally, it takes seconds to do what's called cracking a hash, which is essentially finding what your passwords are on your computer and then using that to gain access to your different accounts. A password manager prevents that because it creates these really complex passwords and then stores them for you so that you don't have to remember that. And then number 3, always use a VPN at home. VPN stands for virtual private network. And essentially what that is, it's like creating a tunnel so that every time you connect to the internet, you're using a tunnel in order for you to go out. It's a difference between, for us older folks on the call that still happen to have to use U.S. Postal Service to send letters and mails and things. It's a difference between sending a letter in an envelope and sending a postcard. If someone has a postcard, anybody that sees the postcard can read its contents. But if it's wrapped up in an envelope, you can't read what's inside. You know that there's a letter going out, but you can't read what's inside. So that, of course, protects you and your credentials and the fact that now you can connect to the internet safely without people spying on what you're doing. So, and I will pause here for some questions before passing it over to Jonathan. Don't know, Bruce and April, if we've had any questions come in or if anybody wants to ask any questions.
Yeah, Ranier, thanks so much. It's Bruce. We are having a pretty nice live chat going on and some questions, including from Sarah Chin. Are there any free VPNs that are good that you would recommend?
I like Hotspot Shield. I find that one to be good. There's also there's a number of them. NordVPN. There's probably one coming out every single day. There's one called Hide My ASS. That's commonly used. Hotspot Shield is one of the ones that I think is most stable, and they do have a free version.
Question about education for cybersecurity. What does it look like? Does it end while at college, or is it something that always continues during your career? Lifelong learning.
Always continues. Lifelong learning all day, every day. Cybersecurity is an applied science, if you will. It's very much applied. It's one of those things that's constantly changing. If you think about what cybersecurity is and also the difficulty of it, the difficulty is that when somebody's building an application, someone's building a network, they have to make sure that all these things are protected, right? Somebody built a house. You got to make sure that all the doors and all the locks are secured. All the doors, all the locks are secured. Well, if you're a hacker, you only need to find one door, one window that happens to be unlocked. That's all it takes. It's just one. So it's very difficult because you're then trying to block all of these points of entry, and then you've got all these people looking for one point of entry, right? The way that IT networks are built is a combination of a lot of different pieces. And cybersecurity is about making sure that not only are each of those pieces are secured individually, but also that they are being secured when they're working together. And cybersecurity professionals are trying to reverse engineer that. They're trying to see if they found a way where something that you put together can be loosened up a little bit, and then they loosen up another little bit, and then they loosen up a little bit, and before you know it, the thing is wide open. So
Great.
Certainly lifelong learning.
Yeah, and finally on password managers, a number of the students are using them. Some are using LastPass. Don't know if you have an opinion about that or what else you might recommend.
LastPass is a great one. There's also Dashlane, the same people that make Hotspot Shield. It's a company called Pango, Pango.co. They also make a password manager, and you can get a nice bundle that includes several different privacy products packaged as one. So yeah, LastPass is one of the most popular ones, and it's great. It's certainly much better than not having something at all. And it's really a matter of just making sure that you're using these things regularly.
Cool. One more, and I think we need to move on, but Carrie Chin asked, would you recommend Kali Linux or any other Linux distro for learning cybersecurity?
Kali Linux is foundational. Kali Linux is something that every cybersecurity professional needs to know, period. So it's a great thing to learn. It's a necessary thing to learn. But it's one thing. It's not that just because you know Kali, you're going to be able to, that's going to be enough. But it's certainly something that must be learned, and it's a great way to start off a cybersecurity journey.
Cool. Rainier, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have some more questions as we go, but would like to now cut over to Jonathan to help us understand a little bit more about the cybersecurity industry.
Great. Thanks, Earl. You're on mute, Jonathan.
Sorry about that, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks to Bruce for putting this together. As you can see, I've shared my screen, and the goal with my presentation is to simplify it for everybody, to make sure everybody understands that this is something that can be learned. This is something that you can get excited about, and just give you a sense of a few of the different types of hacks that can take place and that we can defend against. So we're going to talk about web applications. Web applications are oftentimes somebody has no idea what they're doing. The common person is going to be just like that dog looking under the hood of a car. What am I looking at? What am I doing? The problem is that the people who are looking to attack us have every idea as to what's going on underneath that hood. You may not know what you're doing. Somebody else might not know what they're doing. Do you even know what a web application is? Have you ever used one? I mean, think about that as you're watching this presentation. Do I know what one is? Have I ever used one? your brain's gonna explode. You don't know what you don't know with cybersecurity so often. The web application is not a spider web. It's a real thing. It's software that runs on a web browser. You have a web application in Instagram, Blackboard, Gmail, everything you do on the web has a web application, and those web applications are hackable. If you think about someone selling a hamburger and a bunch of hamburgers as a good analogy, web applications use a client server. The server works for that client. So if you're the burger guy, you're the server, and the client is buying the burgers. The trick with web applications is they can be hacked, just like the guy who's selling the burger. You don't know what the guy who's selling the burger has had happen to that burger that you're about to eat. So think about it. You also don't know what's happened to the server that you're currently using. You need to protect it, and you can protect it. The client eats the burger, and it's offered by the server, but you're going to eat the burger even though you don't know what really is in that burger. You're trusting that server to give you a burger that's working for you. That's how web applications work. And that's why we have to defend against making sure that that hamburger isn't hacked. You know how applications work. Let's learn the different techniques to use to hack them. If you think about, sorry about that. You think about vulnerabilities in a system. You want to make sure that you're as smart and savvy as the person who's trying to break into your server, into your computer. You need someone who's as big as the person is who's hacking into you. Every web application is vulnerable to some degree. They will, as Rainier pointed out, they will find one unlocked door to find sensitive data, to steal money, or just to disrupt your life, just to be disruptive. The big guy is always on their side. So if you don't know anything about cybersecurity, if you don't know anything about web applications, you are vulnerable. That's why you need to either learn it or find someone who knows it. The big guy, again, is always on their side. Hackers love to steal passwords. They're going to use brute force. What does brute force mean? They continually try to figure out what your password is. How many times do we all receive an email? What's your password? You never reveal your password. It's why password managers are so important. You never, and to change those on a regular basis is so important, because they will continue to ask and they will figure out how to discover that password. And they'll do it over and over and over again. They have more time trying to find your password than you do to protect your password. So the bigger your password is, the more complex your password is, the harder it is for a hacker to find it.
And that also means, by the way, that all your passwords are different. That's why the password manager is so important. It's not about having a complex password, but rather that you have a complex password for every single one of the apps that you use.
Right. And if you don't do that, it is as this video points out, I feel badly for the little baby. That rabbit is stealing a cookie from a baby. That's what the hacker is going to do to you unless you protect your passwords, unless you take the necessary precautions. And again, you can figure it out. I'm not a cyber guy, but you can, so this is a learning process for everyone, and it's easy to figure out. It's also pretty rewarding once you figure out how to do this to help others be protected as well. And that's an important thing to think about. It's great to protect yourself, but it's incredibly rewarding to protect your friends, customers, your grandparents, whoever it is. That's really rewarding. So if you can learn about this stuff, there's a value proposition to you for yourself that's wonderful. So don't use common passwords, personal information, as Rainier pointed out, because stealing it is going to be easy.
Hey,
Let's learn
Jonathan,
about,
quick,
yeah.
quick ask. Could you put your screen in presentation mode?
Oh, I'm sorry. Geez, I apologize. Sure.
Thank you.
Geez, Bruce, I really do apologize for that. It didn't went way over my head. So SQL is a database language. No one knows what it means. No one knows no one knows SQL. I don't know what SQL is. So many people don't know it, but it's something that is important to learn to understand how to protect yourself against what are called SQL injections. Again, SQL is the language used to communicate with databases, the English of databases. So if you don't know English, you're going to struggle. If you don't know SQL, you will struggle. SQL injections is not, again, what you would typically think of as an injection. It's not something that's going to go into your body. It is an attempt to change how something reads and how something performs. An example, eat your dinner versus eat your dinner. Now, one makes all the sense in the world, eat your dinner. And that's when your server or your computer or your systems are running smoothly. When a hacker changes Y-O-U-R to Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, first of all, it doesn't make sense. But second of all, it is entirely changed the meaning of that SQL sequence. And if it changes,
well, not only the meaning, what it's also changing, it's essentially the functionality.
Right.
It's changing the way that piece of code works.
Right. And that's a critical challenge that you're going to have. So how do you solve for this? Again, the original objective and original functionality of the web application, so hackers can avoid password checks, steal data, and remove data and create new data. How do you solve for that? You got to look into it. Are there techniques? Are other techniques that hackers are going to look into? Absolutely, and there are a ton of them. Cross-site scripting. Sometimes.
By the way, this is when we were talking about the fact that, you got to secure all these different things, and hackers are only need to find one. These are a perfect example. These are all different ways in which hackers are trying to gain access to things.
Right. So again, what is a session? Well, a session is like a train ticket. You have it during a train ride, and it proves that you're the rightful passenger, or an airline ticket, or your ticket to Fenway Park. If all of a sudden someone has that and you don't, they're going to Fenway Park and you're not. More importantly, they're going to figure out how you got your ticket to Fenway Park. And so there are a number of different vulnerabilities, there are a number of different pain points that you want to protect against. So your ticket is your ID. Someone can impersonate you, they can do bad things. They're going to use cross-site scripting to do evil things without even knowing your password. So it's more than just passwords. There are a number of different ways to accomplish what a hacker wants to accomplish. Next thing, phishing. Phishing is probably the thing that most of us have heard about because people are always cautioning you against being caught in phishing scams. Again, phishing, it's PH, it's not F. And they are everywhere. They're probably one of the most common ways that a hacker is going to hack into your systems. It's a hook, and that's why it's called phishing. Right, that baby wanted the pizza, and then all of a sudden she got, probably squashed, and not happy about it. But the hook was, I'm going to make you eat this, and then I'm going to take it from you really fast and give you something else. So imagine your favorite pepperoni pizza. You love it. And your friend pranks you by switching the pizza for liver. And you fall for it. What's your reaction going to be? Oftentimes, just like that little baby. Phishing is used to create fake bank websites, fake websites. Users give up their passwords thinking it's the real deal. Personalize it for a second. Think about how many of the people on this webinar have a grandparent. Senior citizens are without question the most vulnerable to these types of phishing scams. They aren't familiar with a lot of technology. They oftentimes are overly trusting. You don't want your grandparents to be scammed like this. When links come by email or shared on social media, make sure people know not to trust it. They're up 600% just this year alone. Why? Because everyone's working from home. So many more people are in front of their computers. And the hackers, the bad guys know this. So how do you keep yourself safe from phishing? You don't want to be confused. Look at the address. Every time someone sends you an email and it's from who it says it's from your best friend or your parents or whatever, look at that actual email address. If it's not their, just not their name, but the actual email address. If it's not their email, that email address, delete it right away. But always look at that address.
And then also, where is it going, right? If you could have something that says google.com, right? Well, you could replace the L for an I. Most people won't notice that, especially if the I is capitalized. So what happens is that that's a perfect example of the way that hackers are tricking people, because they're buying domains that look like other domains. And because you're just going through your day quickly, you just click on the thing without really taking the time to inspect whether or not it's actually the real thing.
Right. So that's my presentation, and now we're going to give it back to Bruce or give it to Omar.
We have some questions, so I'd like to put them out there because we're having a lot of good activity on the chat. One of the questions for Rainier or anybody on the team is, throughout your career, what was the most common attack that you've encountered, or the strangest attack you have encountered?
Phishing attacks, by far. So I think it's 84% of all breaches start with a phishing attack. Either that or through malicious code that comes in via email. And then again, somebody clicks on something and then opens up the file, downloads the file. We'll see an example of that in a little bit. But yeah, phishing is by far. So watch out for where you're stepping, watch where you're clicking.
Yeah, it seems like, as you talked about, they're getting more sophisticated with domains and just the look and feel of these phishing emails, et cetera. What's next? Where are they going to go? How do they get more sophisticated?
Well, I mean, a good example that people are doing is that, you'll get an email from, you'll get a call, and the call says, hey, this is Rainier. I'm your friendly customer service rep from Citizens Bank. Somebody was trying to compromise your account, and we just wanted to make sure that your account is safe. Can you validate your name and your information, your social security number, or whatever? And, you trustingly, it's from Citizens Bank, and they're my bank. And people know that because they've been monitoring your social media. They maybe found out that they seen you go in there or something like that, because it's the guy who works at the sandwich shop with you, and they see that you go there and cash a check on Fridays. Well, they then say, hey, and I'm going to send you an email with a password. Can you please confirm it? Can you please validate the link? So now you have a combination of technology used with what's called social engineering in order to motivate you to take action. So that combination of technology and social engineering proves to be pretty effective.
Interesting. We had a question from Thomas asking about, can you elaborate on cross-site scripting? Is it usually initialized with phishing?
Omar, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, cross-site scripting is a vulnerability that bad guys can exploit on the website without having any interaction with a user. So what happens is, if the website is vulnerable, you can add some script, some coding language, and you can take over that session from another user, which is using the website, or you can be in the same network and use that technique to steal their session. So it's something that is kind of elaborate. It is not an easy thing to find out these days. But yes, it's also a common technique from cyber criminals.
I think
Great.
like a really common example of cross-site scripting, like it's kind of hard to understand without an example, I think, is like so if someone like on like an old like message board or like a forum, like if like a really like weak website, you could just like a hacker might like actually write some like JavaScript or something into the message, like where you like enter a message. Now anyone's browser who sees that message might just actually run that code. So if they like entered a script tag, so now your browser is running some random code that you didn't even know it was running, and that code might be like taking your session cookie and like sending it to the attacker. So now that they have it, so it can be as simple as just like typing in.
So they end up essentially impersonating you with the website, and the website thinks that, you know, instead of Peter using the site, now it's Susie that's using the site, but she looks like Peter because she stole the code that identifies Peter as a user. So in this case, no, it's not connected to phishing.
Cool.
It's more connected to the vulnerability of the site itself.
Good. This is great. Thanks, guys. So I think in deference to time, let's keep moving here. I think Omar, you're up next.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is to show you a demo with 4 machines. One is the attacker, the other 3 devices, one is the victim, and other 2 are vulnerable servers, which I'm going to show you right now. Let me share my screen. Hold on. So yes, what I'm going to do is to show you how a bad guy can steal your session, and also how can they get access to your systems. So in the first place, there is a couple of devices here, Linux servers, which is mostly the common technology used by people to build web servers, right? So we have 2 devices here, and then we have a cyber criminal which is trying to gain access to those. So what they do is they usually have the IP addresses. They scan the network to find some information about the website's IP addresses, names, emails, and all that information, kind of information who makes sense to them to hack. So what I'm doing right now is applying one technique. This is a scanning technique, which is going to find vulnerable or vulnerabilities into a website. So right now, what I found is a bunch of text, mostly intelligible. So this text is related to vulnerabilities. So what we see here, it's a common report, which is made with one tool for scanning. And this report gave me valuable information about the website. So here I see they are using web server technology, which is now deprecated, or it's really old. So they are going to see if this is, and they see another things like ports open, services, and stuff like that. So what they do is basically exploit some of these, with some of the techniques, they exploit vulnerability. So they scan, they got results, and with those results, they would find that the site is vulnerable. They test some of the techniques, and one of the techniques they use is uploading information into the website, because the website itself is vulnerable. So what they do next is try to find some useful information, but also use a tool. And let's use another tool here to gain access to the server. So right now I'm inside the server. So what I'm going to do next is create.
So think about it this way, folks. I mean, essentially what he did is he sent a group of people, in this case software, to look around the house. And, you know, they've been scanning an entire neighborhood looking for open doors and windows. Eventually they find the window that's unlocked. They find a way to bring a ladder, i.e. a tool, that will allow them to get to the second floor where that window is. And then they use yet another tool in order to climb through the window and find themselves inside the apartment. And then once they're inside the apartment, then they begin to take other steps. But it's essentially a methodical process of doing research, discovery, and eventually taking advantage of the weaknesses that are found.
Yeah, and that said, now that I'm inside the server, what I'm going to do is create what we call a payload. I'm going to use, because the hacker studies the nature of the people they are attacking. So they know that people, in this case, the victim is using a software to connect to the servers to make support tasks, like an IT support team member or something. So what they do is they download actually a legitimate software, and they build a payload which is injecting some coding, some malicious coding into that file. So when they do this, they have the ability to upload that information or that file into the server. So here, what I'm going to do is to use the technique we find and put the actual, and let me put this way. The actual file, I'm already uploading the file into the server. So how do I know that? Because when I connect to the server, I see here the file. So the next is to build something to send to the victim, to build, let's say, an email. So the email is going to have this link so they can download the infected file. So in the meantime, the attacker, what they do, and this is the actual software website. You can see here and here, and it's really look like what I'm going to show you next, okay? So they got the file, they infected the file, and now what they're going to do is to prepare the attacker's device to receive the connection from the victim's computer. So this, what we saw here, it's a technique to exploit a vulnerable extension in the server. What that means is the server has installed a software, and they exploit that software which is vulnerable. Okay. So Mark, do you want to add something, Mark?
No, I think this is good so far.
Okay. So next we have this guy computer, and he just received, and he has the Facebook and his banking website account, and he just received the email. So if you see here, this.
So he got an email from somebody, right?
Yeah, he got an email from somebody saying, this is IT support team, and like since you are a part of the support team, you need to download this software to make support. Okay.
Yeah, so again, this is a combination of using technology and social engineering. So they know that you work in customer service, tech support, taking calls from people, and you're part of this department. So they send you something motivating you to take action based on research that they've done on the individual. So they use the combination of setting up the bait with the website, infecting the website, and then driving people towards that place.
Yeah. So they download the file. Now they got the file. We just need to wait until he executes the file. So what happened is, usually this kind of people.
And keep in mind, just so you guys know, I mean, you think about that file, you're like, well, if I got a file, why would I open it? Something looks weird. Well, in this case, it looks weird because we're using a particular type of file that you may or may not be familiar with. But that file and that email could look like it's coming from your sister, and your sister's sending you pictures from the weekend. You know, she was at the beach and she was there with her friends, and you know, she's sending pictures. Hey, you know, we had a lot of fun. Again, the email looks like it's coming from somebody that you know, and we know that you know this person. You know, her name is Jessica Smith, because we see that on Facebook you're connected to someone who's Jessica Smith, and it's your sister. So you get an email from Jessica Smith, and it's, hey, weekend pictures. Well, that's how you go ahead and you open the pictures, because it's pictures. By opening the picture, you're essentially executing the file. You're opening the file, and you're allowing the file to run on your computer.
Yeah, and in that case, could be PowerPoint slide deck, presentation, Word document, could be anything. Could be just pictures like when you said. So it could be anything. It could be just one image. So all that you need is to click on that, to run that, and to do whatever you need to do, usually do, to make your work.
And keep in mind that we're showing you something where that's a little bit more manual, but many a times what happens is the file automatically runs. The file is programmed to run automatically in the background. And so you don't even know that it's running. You just opened up the image, you opened up the thing, and you see that there's a picture, and you just don't think anything of it. And then you close it and you move on with your day. And this could be something that you're doing on your computer, you could be doing it on your phone.
Yeah, right. So what happened is, in the meantime, he's working and he has this file open. He is actually, they got the connection right now. So you can see here. Now I got the vulnerable device, and let's say I want to be sure. So I can see, and you can see here is the same IP address. So I gain access to this device. So now,
so essentially, now that he got the file to execute, he's able to essentially control the machine remotely.
Yeah.
Because the person inadvertently gave them control. Without knowing that they gave control, they just clicked on something.
Yeah, so I can basically can have a shell. I can, for instance, execute files. I open a calculator here. I can mess around with the victim's device. I can also send, let's say, send information, or send, let's see, say hello there. You have pound. So you can see here, for instance, they got that information. So I believe I made something wrong here. Yeah, I need to go out here and in here, and there you go. So I have complete control of this device. And that's it. I just want
Do you want
to
to show some of the other things, such as sound, camera?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. So right now, I'm having a streaming of this device here. So I'm going to connect the camera so you guys can see.
So in this case, now essentially the hacker is looking at everything the person is doing on the computer.
Yeah. So you can see if I'm entering or watching some email, having access to some information, the hacker can see everything here. They can capture the keys, the keystrokes from your computer, so you can basically steal your bank account or personal information. And actually, they can, as you do this, they can also, let me show you here. They can take a picture of your camera, or they can have you completely on plain view. So they can see you. They can see whatever you are doing. And also,
And you don't necessarily know that the camera is
Yeah.
on, right? So the camera's just operating, but you don't know that it's on, which
'Cause
is
your green
why
light's
it's so
not
important.
Right.
Yeah, your green light, your red light, whatever, that thing is not on. It's just functioning. You know, that's why it's so important for you to have, you know, for if you have a laptop that has a built-in camera or whatever, that you have these little things that essentially block the camera. And it could be something as a little, you know, piece of black tape that covers it or something else. But your camera is running, so think about that. You're in your room, you got your laptop up because you're doing whatever, and then you walk around. Maybe you go take a shower, and you come back into your room, and you're changing, and your camera's streaming. And or you have, you know, you've got your computer, you got your phone or whatever, and you're talking to people, and everything that is being said, the microphone of the computer, the microphone of the phone is listening and of course streaming it to the attacker.
so
So
basically,
same thing with this, right? Now the password, I was talking about the bank account example, right? You put in your username and password, you're checking in your bank account, whether it's you, it's your parents, it's your, you know, your grandmother, whoever, they're going in, they're doing their thing. And because every keystroke is being collected, now they have access to your username and password, and they can get into your bank accounts and do whatever they want to do with that.
yeah. So basically, this is what they do. They compromise devices, not just for having access to that device, but also for having access to your information, your personal information, all your files, and they can have access to that too. So if you see here, I have a bunch of commands of different actions I can do. I can actually have access to your computer files to see what information you have there and see if something is valuable to me as a hacker.
So your pictures, your videos, things you may not want other people to see, you know, now it's all out there for the taking. And that opens the door for you to be blackmailed. It opens a door. A very common type of attack is what's called the denial of service attack. And what happens is that criminals infect millions of computers automatically, like this computer got infected, and they just let them sit there, and they just wait. And months go by, and they're just infecting millions of computers. And then one day, they use all those computers in order to attack someone else. And that's why it's so difficult to catch cyber criminals, that are like, professional level criminals, and why we need more cyber defenders, because essentially they're hard to catch, because they'll infect one computer, and then from there they'll infect another computer and another computer and another computer, and then by the time they go and hack, the Pentagon or whoever, they're 10 steps removed, and it's really hard for you to work your way back and find that individual, and that's why there's a need and an opportunity for more cyber professionals.
Rainier or Omar, explain what people would do if they had that type of an infection on their computer and they thought that they might. I mean, what would someone do to sort of figure that out?
Well, it depends.
Depends.
In many cases, they see some strange things happening, like high CPU, high memory using. They actually see, because in normal conditions, they are not going to use more than 50% of the CPU. So something is wrong, something is going on, something is happening into the device, they are going to see some, strange behavior in some cases. In other cases, with more advanced attacks, they are not going to see anything. So they are completely stealth.
Hey, Omar, it's Bruce. We have some questions coming in on the chat. To go back a little bit, Thomas is active again. He says, did you just download PuTTY to test it? If you could upload to the website.
No, I just downloaded, injected a payload or infected the file and send it to the victim's computer. I didn't make any updates on the actual file.
Great. Also from Thomas, he asked, did the tools enable the connection or the corrupted file that was open?
Again?
I think he was asking earlier if the tools enabled the connection or the corrupted file that was open. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, those are mostly, there are a bunch of tools which are open source, and there are another, another group of tools you can pay for it. Most of them are on the deep web, which is a part of the internet. Is not accessible to the people, normal people.
But what he's talking about is, did you use PuTTY to enable the connection, the remote connection?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I use the tools. Actually, the tools are available in Metasploit to have the connection.
We have a bunch more coming in. This is a terminology question. What is the difference between a virus and a hack, or are they the same?
Well, a virus, go ahead, Rainier.
Yeah, a virus is a piece of software. So it's like, for example, there's a difference between a gun and shooting someone.
Yeah.
A virus is the weapon. Using the weapon is the hack.
And then, hacking is so prevalent, but they're asking how much knowledge does it take to do some of what you've shown today? Can basically anyone, with a little bit of time and willingness, learn this stuff and be able to go out and hack?
Well, it depends. There are a bunch of tools on the internet available. A lot of videos right now in YouTube available that show you how to do this. But actually, in my case, I have more than 20 years in this field, the cybersecurity field. You don't need those to be able to do that. But you can find information on the internet.
Yeah. And it depends, right? Because it depends on how complex of an attack, right? So, the thing with these criminals is that, anybody can go commit a crime, doesn't mean you're going to get away with it, right? So that's where that skill comes in. There's a difference between committing a crime or attempting to commit a crime and being able to do it successfully. There's also the complexity of the crime, right? Professional criminals, for example, are not interested in browsing somebody's computer so they can copy over their pictures, or so that they can just snoop around to see what they're doing. These are criminal organizations that are in it strictly for the money, and they're trying to figure out how to get access to other more valuable things. And a lot of it is automated. By the time they get involved to actually put their hands on a keyboard to do something, a lot of the and Omar, you could stop sharing. A lot of the breach has already happened, and now at that point they're essentially just going in a very unique way in order for them to be able to then cover their tracks and not expose themselves to law enforcement, if anybody ever finds out that that took place in the first place.
Yeah, another question for you and the team is, how do you make sure to keep up with all the different malware?
It's impossible to keep up with all the different malware. I mean, you use tools. The most important thing is to keep up with the security patches that your software vendors are putting up. So if you're using Microsoft Office and Microsoft products, you could set it up so that automatically those tools get updated. You could set it up so that your computer browser, Safari, whatever, gets updated. And if you're a company, you can also set up a lot of things to happen automatically. If you're a very, very big company, then you're going to have a team of people that's responsible for keeping those things updated so that your websites, your web applications, and your other properties are not vulnerable. So it's impossible for you to keep up with all the malware. However, there are tools in companies, McAfee, Symantec, and other antivirus providers. That's what they do. They're constantly looking out for new quote unquote signatures and new malware that came up. And then what they do is they update your computer so that your computer is able to recognize malware for what it is. If your computer gets attacked by malware that has never been seen before, which is often called a zero-day attack, or a zero-day malware, it means that it hasn't been registered in the past by the different agencies that are monitoring these things. And those are really, really hard to find. And that's where some of the new technologies that use artificial intelligence come in, where they're not necessarily looking for quote unquote signatures. They're not looking for something that looks like a duck and walks like a duck, but rather they're saying, well, the only thing that I have in this barn is sheep. And if a cow comes in, that's strange. Let me flag that. That's different than looking for cows, right? So you're looking for exceptions instead of looking for specific rules. And it's a constant game of cat and mouse.
Mm-hmm. Great. I had a question. So for the youth who are on the webinar, some of them are still in high school, some of them are recent graduates. If they're interested in continuing to learn more about cybersecurity, what would you recommend they do next?
They can go to youth.cyberwarrior.com, youth.cyberwarrior.com. We've got some summer programs going right now. We're also going to have programs in September. And then there's a ton of stuff. Our programs are live, meaning that there's an actual instructor, like Mark, who was on the call earlier, is one of our instructors. And there's other instructors on the team as well. So we're actually teaching you, in a video conference such as this one. But there's a lot of YouTube videos, for example, that are available that you can go and learn. And it's a matter of being hungry for knowledge. And if you're hungry for knowledge and you're willing to put in the time, then you can certainly learn. You can learn anything as long as you have the focus and dedication.
Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, what are some of the key soft skills that have made you successful in your cybersecurity career and you think are important for people to consider when entering the field?
I mean, overall, effective communication is important, right? So being able to get your ideas across, you know, the ability to work effectively with others, the ability to, even if you disagree with people, to be able to find common ground. You don't necessarily need to agree with them, but you need to be able to work through whatever differences and collaborate. So I find that the soft skills, in terms of career success, tend to be more important than technical skills. However, like anything else, regardless of how good of a communicator you may be, if you're going into medicine, you still need to know medicine. But once you're there, your ability to be successful is going to be dependent upon things that'll fall outside of whether or not you know about this particular content. So that's some of the things that I think it's important. Teamwork, but more important than anything is just discipline and making good choices, making the choice to invest your time on growing versus investing your time on other things. And, you know, as a young person, that's a difficult thing to do. You got a lot of peer pressure from your friends to go out, to do this, to do that. And, you know, if you're choosing to spend your time that way, then it's going to be difficult to compete with someone who's putting in the majority of their energy into growing. In the future, you're going to be asking that person for a job, and you may not even get a phone call. And that's the difference, that one person was willing to make sacrifices that other people weren't.
Great. We have just a couple more minutes, so if you have questions, please put them in the chat. You have a wonderful opportunity here to interact with Rainier and the other experts, Omar and Jonathan and Mark. So please let us know. I mean, one other thing that I was thinking of, Rainier, you know, we have all this new automation through voice devices and automobiles, and computers are everywhere. How does that sort of expand the vulnerability issues for the average consumer?
Dramatically. I mean, a lot of the hacks are automated as well. So, you know, that's why computer literacy is so important. You have to stay on top of things. You have to be vigilant. It's unfortunate, but it is the world we live in. And it's, you know, it's one of those things that does represent an amazing career opportunity. Automation is changing the way that we live and work. But in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's going to be something coming out that we didn't even think about today. And it's going to change the way we live. So the only thing that is certain is change. And you just got to be comfortable learning new things and adapting.
Perfect. Thanks. I don't see anything else coming in, so I think this is a natural point to conclude. I really want to thank again Rainier, Omar, Jonathan, and Mark for joining us this afternoon and lending their expertise and their insight and their experience to our webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks everyone for the opportunity. Hopefully you guys consider cybersecurity as a career. It's amazing career. It's very rewarding. You will never be bored. There's always something new. So hopefully we'll see you in the field someday. And if you have any questions, you know, again, you can go to cyberwarrior.com or youth.cyberwarrior.com to learn more about some of our programs.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, I just want to mention that in the coming weeks, we have some additional webinars for those who are tuning in. Next week, we're going to have a wonderful panel of young IT professionals, a diverse young people talking about tech careers. If you want to join for that, the week after that, we're going to be exploring different tech training and education options after high school. And then we're going to end our series with an overview of the augmented and virtual reality universe. All the webinars, again, run from noon to 1:15 p.m. If you want any more information or want to reach out to me, you can do that through my email address here, bruce.steven@bostonpic.org, or give me a call. Thanks again, everyone, for joining today, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.
Thank you for having us, Bruce.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone.
Thanks, everybody.